Hello and welcome, and thanks for joining me in this next video today. Um, I thought I would try and create a series basically of talking about a different car for each week to make it Car of the Week. And yeah, I'll hopefully have several more episodes to follow this one. And this is episode 1 with the Austin 7. I hope you enjoy, and please feel free to like and subscribe. The Austin Motor Company was founded in 1905 by this man, Herbert Austin, who had previously worked at Wolseley, creating motor cars there. This was the first car that wore the Austin name. It was the Austin 2530 horsepower, and it was quite a luxurious machine in its day, and during the early years of Austin, these are the sort of products it came out with. And by 1907, the car was replaced by this, the Austin 40 horsepower. Now, in 1909, Austin introduced the 7 horsepower, or 7 HP, not to get confused with the 7 of later years. This was a completely different car, and in fact it wasn't actually built by Austin at all. It was built by the Swift Motor Company in Coventry, but some of the cars were sold as Austins and some of them were sold by Swift, but the original design was by Austin. I'm pretty sure the last examples of these were manufactured in 1911. During World War I, Austin's workforce of staff greatly expanded from only about 2,500 workers to 22,000. So they had a big role to play in manufacturing all different equipment such as shells and even aircraft. But it was cars that was at the heart of the Austin Motor Company, motor cars, and that's what they returned to after the end of the war. And by 1922, the baby Austin, or the Austin 7 more formally, made its debut on the motoring scene. And what a hit it was! The Austin 7 proved to be hugely popular, especially within the United Kingdom, and the Ford Model T, it may have put motoring on the map for the USA and most other parts of the world, but in Great Britain it was the Austin 7 that gave motoring to the masses with its great affordability and generally quite straightforward design. Many different variations of the Austin 7 were produced during its 17-year life. This model is known as the Chummy, and it was seen as an alternative and a more comfortable, I would say, and I guess relatively safer alternative to a motorbike and sidecar. And yeah, it was unveiled in 1923, and it was one of the first sort of mass market versions of the Austin 7. From popularity to quite a rarity, this model is the Austin 7 Ulster, produced from 1929 to 1931, so it was quite short-lived, and only 150 were ever made. As I'm sure you've guessed by looking at it though, it was a sporty model, almost like not quite a race car, but sort of like a sportier sort of car, and it took part in races, many over the years, and yeah, it was surprisingly good for 80 miles an hour, which was quite a lot from a 747cc engine in about 1929 to 1931, as I said. So yeah, quite sought after today. A few years after the Ulster, we had the Nippy model, which arrived in 1934, and I think production finished in 1937 of the Nippy. It, well, as the name suggests, was, I guess just more nippy than the standard Austin 7 saloon. It was flat out at about 65 miles an hour and was powered by a 747cc engine, just like many other Austin 7s. But more were made than the Ulster, which makes them slightly less desirable, but still I think a very attractive little car. This model is the box saloon, produced during the early 1930s, although there were also many other saloon versions of the Austin 7. There's so many different derivatives of this car, it's quite mind-boggling to be honest, but I'm just going through the basic model range. So yeah, this was the standard saloon in the early 30s, box saloon. And this is the Tourer, of which many different versions were also made. There are even some Austin 7 chummy Tourers, so it gets very confusing, as I said. This is the Austin 7 Ruby, a updated and restyled version of the Austin 7, available from 1934. And this was the Big 7, produced from 1937 to 1939. And as the title says, it was a lot bigger than all of the previous Austin 7s, and was the final model to be introduced during the Austin 7's life. And it featured more space on the inside and also a little bit more power. It must be remembered though that not all of the 290,000 Austin 7s ever produced were cars. Some of them were vans, like this nice example. And they were relatively popular as well. Well, I say relatively, to be honest, very popular compared to all other vehicles on the road at the time. Even other car makers other than Austin produced the Austin 7 under license. This example was made by Swallow Sidecars Limited, which later became SS Cars, and later on from that it became the famous Jaguar brand that we all know. And this model had slightly more, I guess, streamlined styling, and it was literally sold as the Austin 7 Swallow. Even Nissan of Japan built a version of the Austin 7 that was known as the Datsun Type 11, and that helped Japan get their world on wheels. BMW of Germany even made a version of the Austin 7, sold as the BMW Dixie, and it was the company's first car. They had previously produced motorcycles, and I think it was things to do with aero engineering. Rosengart of France also produced a version of the Austin 7. And during the early years of this man's career, you may or may not recognise this man, but he is Alec Izigonis, the famous designer of the Mini, the BMC ADO 16, also known as the 1100, 1300, the Austin Maxi, and the Morris Minor. Well, during the early years of his career, he created a sort of a racing sort of car based upon the Austin 7. Being a British design car, the Austin 7 was also built in Britain at the famous Longbridge plant just south of Birmingham. And here, I think this photo was taken when the 100,000 Austin 7 was made. And so we can see several examples here just outside of the Longbridge plant. As successful as the Austin 7 was, all good things must come to an end, and so it did in 1939, with the final examples being produced that year. But overall, the car saw a remarkable success. In total, 290,000 were ever produced, and that was a great figure for a car of that era. World War II also broke out in 1939. The very earliest examples of the Austin 7 were powered by 696cc four-cylinder engines. However, all of the other models, pretty much the majority of Austin 7s produced were powered by 747cc engines. They were also four cylinders, and they also went on to power this. The three-wheeled Reliant van, made by Reliant Motors of Tamworth from the 1930s until the 1950s. It had unusual styling, but it also helped Reliant gain their success, which later on produced the Regal and the iconic Regal, I should say, because of its appearance in a notable television sitcom of a few decades ago, and also the Reliant Robin after the Regal. The Reliant Regal and the Reliant Robin were not powered by Austin 7 engines though. Anyway, that's enough about Reliant. One of the key rivals to the Austin 7 when the Austin 7 was new was the Morris Minor, and I'm not getting confused with the Morris Minor of later years. This is the 1929 version of the Morris Minor that was produced from 1929 and into the 1930s. So it wasn't a key rival to the Austin 7 from the beginning, but during its midlife to later life it was, and it certainly sold at a very competitive price. Even though production of the original Austin 7 ceased in 1939, the name lived on throughout advertising for the Austin A30 in the 1950s, and it was often known as the Austin A37. So the name sort of lived on, and the Austin A30 became sort of a successor, a post-war successor to the original Austin 7. Even with the Mini in 1959, Austin still used the 7 name, calling it the Austin Mini 7, and BMC on the other end with Morris called the Morris version of the Mini the Morris Mini Minor. So that's about it. That's the story of the Austin 7. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I think what we should remember from this first episode of Car of the Week is, yeah, we should be really grateful for these vintage cars, and I think, to be honest, more appreciative of them, because without them we wouldn't have the cars of today. And if you like BMWs like the M4, the M3 and all those fast cars, we wouldn't have them without the Austin 7, most likely, because BMW's first car was based on a Austin 7, remember, and so was Nissan's. So we wouldn't have the Qashqais or the Dukes or the GTRs of today without the Austin 7. So I think we should be thankful for the Austin 7, and what a great car it really was. And I don't know how many more times I can say Austin 7 in one sentence. Thank you for watching, and please feel free to like and subscribe.